Okay, well, let's talk about identifying the requirements of the communication. So we're going to um, we're going to pass on a particular message, or we're going to have a discussion with somebody to solicit some information, or we're going to promote an idea. And we want to be prepared before we go in, because the the better we're prepared, the better the outcomes of trying to achieve whatever our purpose is. So we should really stop and think a little bit about how do we identify communication requirements before we get into the act of communicating. Now, of course, for some situations, informal discussions or chats about things that perhaps aren't so critical, um, you don't necessarily have to sit down and go through a thought process about that. You just engage in spontaneous conversation. But when we've got an important message that we want to share, or we've got to gather some information and we want to make sure that we've got the right information, we want to make sure that that we're more precise in the way we do things, so that we're not wasting our time and we're not wasting other people's time. So let's unpack this a little bit. What do we need to do to identify communication requirements? Well, there's a number of reasons why we communicate. And the very first point should be to try and work out what is the reason and what's our purpose of communication. What is the purpose? Why are we doing this? And what's our aim? What does success at the end look like? And that means thinking about the goal of the communication. And there are a number of reasons why we do communicate. Sometimes, we communicate to let people know information. Sometimes we communicate to sell an idea, persuade them for our position or perspective or product or service sometimes. Other times we communicate to gather information. That is, we want to ask questions. We want to get people's different point of views. We might want to test the market on ideas. Other times we just communicate to build relationships, goodwill, build our reputation, or establish or strengthen our relationship with somebody. And most often these things are all a mix of these four things. They're not one or the other, but a combination of many of these things. So we might let people know what our purpose is, so the informing. We're going to ask some questions about gathering information. We might put forth our recommendations, which are about persuading. And in the process, we want to build some relationships. But it's good to unpack that and say, okay, well, these are the type of things that we're going to be doing. So I need to not only think about the big picture in terms of my aim and purpose, but also have a look at some of these more micro elements that I want to try and tick off. And to do that, I need to really understand my audience. I need to know who they are, what they want out of this, what do they already know about it, and what are their goals and aspirations from this communication or this interaction we're going to have. And then that leads on to think about what does success look like at the end of this communication. What if we were to finish this communication and I was to walk away really happy, what would that mean? What would that look like? What are the indicators or markers, or what are the things that would have been achieved? And then through all that, then to start thinking about what's the content that I need to share and so forth. And I touched on understanding the audience, but just if we look at that in a little bit greater depth, workplaces are diverse places, and I've talked about this in the diversity unit, where we're diverse individuals. We come from um, uh, quite a mix of characteristics and backgrounds, and each of us bring a different mix to the interaction or to every situation that we interact with. When we're communicating with individuals and teams, we need to be highly aware of this, because that's going to shape the way that we communicate to be effective. So, for example, we think about the demographic of the audience. We think about, what do they know on the subject? How interested are they in there? What's going to be their attitude? Are they going to be formal or informal about this? We can also think about things like literacy, language and numeracy. How proficient are they with the language, how proficient are they with the numbers involved, and that's going to also shape the way that we communicate for success. And then what are their needs in all this? What's I know what success is going to look like for me. Well, what will success look like for them? And what are their expectations around that? And also thinking about what else is going on. So it's particularly when we think about the environmental factors that impact on that is, is it a busy time when I'm going to be having this discussion, or am I sending out this email, or I'm making this presentation? Are people going to be distracted by other matters? Is there anything else that's going on that might take priority or precedence? Is the location in which we're going to have this discussion or this presentation, is that going to be appropriate? Are there other interfering factors, like such as noise pollution or people coming in and out, or uh, and so forth? And then go back to some of the other elements when identifying the requirements of the communication, such as my scope of authority, um, the level of confidentiality and privacy that I need to consider, and then going back to all those mediums that I talked about earlier. What's the best way in which to do this communication? Is it going to be one-on-one meeting? It's going to be a video call? Should it be maybe an email? Can I do this as part of an instant message? Can I send a message through our instant messaging service? Should I just put up a poster? What's the best way to do this? And then thinking about the medium. Once we identify the message, the purpose, what success looks like, the audience, what's the content and what's the environment. We think about things like authority and confidentiality, and then we say, okay, well, what's the best way to do this?